Hello, my friend. Welcome. Welcome to this quiet space. Welcome to a gentle journey. Tonight we will explore a fascinating and perhaps a little unsettling idea. What if the most mundane, most everyday activities, those things we do without a second thought, held a hidden deadly risk? Please allow your body to gently relax. Perhaps you can let your shoulders soften. Perhaps you can take a slow, quiet breath, feeling it fill you, then softly release. Just allow yourself to settle in. We are about to step back in time. Imagine a world without safety regulations, without advanced medicine, a world where danger lurks in the unseen, where everyday actions that seem utterly harmless to us now could, in the blink of an eye, lead to serious harm or even the end of a life. We won't dive into the gruesome stuff, my friend. Instead, let's take a closer look at the subtle challenges people faced back in 1400. Can you imagine? Life was so different then. They dealt with everything from plagues to harsh winters, all while trying to make a living. It's wild to think about how their reality shaped their daily lives, right? We really take our safety for granted, don't we? Think about it. The clean water we sip, the delicious food we chow down on, and those sturdy homes we call our own. It's wild to realize that just 6 centuries ago, people didn't have these comforts. They faced all sorts of dangers, from contaminated water to flimsy shelters. Nowadays, we're wrapped in a cozy blanket of modern protections that make life so much easier and safer. It's pretty amazing when you stop to think about how far we've come, right? For medieval people, danger was often unseen, lurking in the very fabric of their daily existence. They lived with perils they didn't understand or couldn't control, and perhaps their very ignorance was a kind of shield, protecting them from the constant anxiety that we might feel if we were aware of such risks. They simply lived often trusting in fate or providence. Tonight we will gently turn back the pages of history. We will embark on a calm journey through the seemingly ordinary lives of people in 1400. Each chapter will gently reveal a different everyday activity that surprisingly held the potential for deadly consequence. My hope is that by understanding their world, by allowing your mind to gently wander through these moments of quiet peril, you can find a profound sense of retrospective relaxation in your own life. You can feel the quiet comfort of your present safety, the immense peace that comes from living in a world so much more protected. This isn't just history. It's a peaceful reflection, a soothing whisper from the past, inviting us to appreciate our own security and to guide you towards your own deep restorative rest. So take another slow, quiet breath. Let your body feel heavy and safe. Let us begin our peaceful journey into the slumber of forgotten times. I imagine, if you will, a small village nestled in the rolling hills of medieval England. The year is 1400, and life here moves at a gentle pace. The air is crisp and clean, filled with the scent of wood smoke and freshly baked bread. As we walk through the narrow streets, we see the daily routines of villagers unfolding before us. A woman draws water from the village, her movements slow and deliberate. She has no idea that the simple act of quenching her thirst could lead to illness or worse. The concept of waterborne diseases is unknown to her and her neighbors. They trust in the purity of their well, unaware of the invisible dangers that may lurk within. In a nearby field, a farmer tends to his crops. His hands are rough and calloused from years of toil. He bends to pull a weed, unaware that a single scratch from a thorn could introduce bacteria into his bloodstream. In this world before antibiotics, even a minor injury could become life-threatening. As evening approaches, families gather in their homes. Candles flicker, casting a warm glow on thatched roofs. The simple act of lighting a flame to dispel the darkness carries its own risks. Fire is both a necessity and a constant threat in these closely packed wooden dwellings. Children play in the streets, their laughter echoing off stone walls. They are blissfully unaware of the dangers that surround them. A splinter, a fall, or an encounter with a stray animal could all lead to dire consequences in a world without modern medicine. Yet despite these hidden perils, life goes on. The villagers find joy in simple pleasures. They gather to share stories, sing songs, and celebrate the changing seasons. Their resilience is a quiet testament to the human spirit. As we observe this scene from our vantage point in time, we can feel a deep sense of gratitude for the safety and security we enjoy today. We can appreciate the countless advancements that have made our world so much safer. So, my friend, as you lie here listening to these gentle words, allow yourself to sink deeper into relaxation. Feel the weight of your body pressing into your bed. Know that you are safe, protected by centuries of progress and knowledge. Let this awareness wash over you, bringing a profound sense of peace. As we continue our journey through time, remember that each breath you take is a gift. Each moment of safety is precious. Allow this understanding to guide you towards a deep, restful sleep, where you can dream of both past and present, secure in the knowledge that you are protected. Contaminated sources, ponds, rivers, wells. Now, my friend, let us journey back in time to the medieval world of 1400, where the simple act of drinking water held hidden dangers. This is a world where the most basic necessity of life could become a silent killer. Imagine a bustling village, its inhabitants going about their daily lives, unaware of the invisible threat lurking in their water sources. Picture a weary traveler, parched from a long journey, eagerly approaching a clear, cool stream. They cup their hands, bringing the water to their lips, not realizing that each sip could be their last. In this time, water came directly from nature, untreated and unfiltered. Ponds, rivers, and wells were the primary sources of this life-giving liquid. But these sources, which seemed so pure and vital, often harbored deadly secrets. Think of a villager lowering a wooden bucket into a slow-moving river. The water sparkles in the sunlight, appearing fresh and inviting. But upstream, unseen by our villager, lies a grim reality. Animal carcasses decompose in the shallows. Human waste from other settlements seeps into the flow, and runoff from nearby farmlands carries a cocktail of contaminants. Or consider the communal well in the town square. It stands as a gathering place, a source of life for the entire community. But beneath the surface, danger lurks. The well, dug without knowledge of proper sanitation, sits perilously close to outhouses and animal pens. With each rainfall, with each passing day, harmful bacteria seep into the groundwater, contaminating the very source of life. The medieval people had no concept of microscopic organisms. They couldn't see the bacteria, the viruses, the parasites that swarmed in their water. To them, clear water was clean water. But in reality, each mouthful was a gamble, a roll of the dice with their very lives at stake. And this danger was not confined to the lower classes. Even in the grand castles and manor houses, water was a potential harbinger of death. The wealthy might have their own wells or access to springs, but without proper sanitation and treatment, these sources were just as likely to be contaminated. Imagine the quiet suffering that would follow a simple drink. A child playing in the streets stops to quench their thirst at a public fountain. Within days, they're struck by a violent illness. Fever rages, stomach cramps rack their small body, and dehydration sets in rapidly. Parents watch helplessly as their child weakens, not understanding the true cause of the illness. This scene played out countless times across medieval Europe. Dysentery, cholera, typhoid. These were not distant threats, but ever-present realities. Yet, in a cruel irony, the very thing that could save them, clean water, was often the source of their suffering. The lack of understanding about disease transmission compounded this danger. In the narrow, crowded streets of medieval towns, human and animal waste was often disposed of haphazardly. It piled up outside homes, ran in open sewers down the streets, and was dumped directly into the same waterways used for drinking and bathing. Picture a warm summer day in a medieval city. The streets are alive with activity, but the air is thick with the stench of decay and waste. Flies buzz from piles of refuse to open food stalls in the market. A woman draws water from a well to prepare the evening meal, unaware that the same bucket has been used to dispose of waste just hours before. This created a perfect breeding ground for pathogens. Diseases spread rapidly through contaminated water, used not just for drinking, but for cooking and bathing as well. A single contaminated source could devastate an entire community. And yet, water was essential. Thirst is a primal drive, one that cannot be ignored for long. So day after day, the people of 1400 faced an impossible choice: risk deadly illness or suffer the equally deadly effects of dehydration. The tragedy of this situation was compounded by the prevailing beliefs of the time. Illness was often seen as a result of bad humors or divine punishment. The true causes, invisible microorganisms in their water, were beyond their understanding or imagination. Imagine the frustration and fear that must have gripped communities as mysterious illnesses swept through their ranks. The helplessness of watching loved ones succumb to what we now know were waterborne diseases. The desperate attempts to find cures or preventions, all while unknowingly continuing to consume the very thing that was killing them. Imagine living in the 1400s, where something as simple as taking a sip of water could actually be deadly. It's wild, right? This unseen menace, like a shadow lurking everywhere, didn't discriminate. It could take down anyone: kids, the elderly, the wealthy, and the poor. Whole communities were wiped out, leaving behind empty homes and heartbroken families. Just think about it. The very essence of life was fraught with danger. The impact of this invisible killer extended far beyond individual suffering. It shaped societies, influenced population growth, and even affected the course of history. Entire towns could be abandoned due to contaminated water sources. Armies, more often than not, were defeated not by enemy swords, but by the diseases spread through their own water supplies. Yet life went on. People adapted as best they could, developing practices that, while not always effective, showed an instinctive understanding that something in their water could be harmful. Some would only drink ale or wine, unknowingly benefiting from the antibacterial effects of alcohol. Others would boil water before drinking, a practice that, while not understood scientifically, did provide some protection. For most people, every single day felt like a gamble. Just think about it. Each cup of water, every bowl of soup, and every bite of food made with that tainted water could make you seriously sick or even worse. It was terrifying. When we take a moment to think about medieval life, it really hits home just how crucial modern water treatment and sanitation are. I mean, can you imagine? Just turning on a tap and having clean, safe water flow out like it's no big deal. For our ancestors, that would have felt like pure magic. They had to rely on rivers or wells, often risking their health. So next time you sip that refreshing glass of water, remember it's a luxury that took centuries to perfect, and we're so lucky to enjoy it today. It's pretty wild, right? We can sit back and admire how far we've come, but let's not forget that for so many folks around the globe, getting access to clean water is still a daily grind. Can you imagine having to walk miles just to fill a bucket with water that might not even be safe to drink? The struggles that haunted medieval Europe still loom over millions in developing countries today. Take places like sub-Saharan Africa, where waterborne diseases are a real threat. It's heartbreaking to think about, especially when we're just a tap away from fresh water. We really need to raise awareness and do something about this. Our journey through the wild and unpredictable waters of medieval times really drives home how fragile human life can be, doesn't it? It's wild to think that something as simple and vital as water could turn into a silent killer. Just picture it. People drinking from contaminated sources, completely unaware of the dangers lurking beneath the surface. This makes us realize how crucial scientific understanding is, especially when it comes to recognizing the importance of clean water. Remember the Black Death? It's a stark reminder that without proper knowledge, even the most basic necessities can become threats. It's fascinating and a bit scary to think about, right? As the echoes of those contaminated waters fade away, let's dive into another basic human need that came with a shocking risk food. Can you believe that something as simple as bread could be a quiet peril? It's wild. So join me next as we dig into the dark side of eating bread, the spore of death. We'll uncover how moldy bread could lead to some serious health issues. Ever heard of ergot? It's a fungus that can mess with your mind and body. Let's unravel this intriguing story together. Ergotism and rye bread, St. Anthony's fire. Now, my friend, let us turn our attention to another surprising source of hidden peril, the very bread that formed a staple of their diet. Imagine that your daily bread, the very staff of life, could contain a deadly secret. For many medieval peasants, especially in northern Europe, rye bread was the primary sustenance, but rye, when grown in damp conditions, is susceptible to a fungus called ergot picture, tiny, dark, hard growths on the grain. Sometimes, mistaken for mere impurities, this fungus produces powerful toxins. When flour made from contaminated rye was baked into bread, those toxins were consumed. This led to a horrific condition known as ergotism or more. Commonly St. Anthony's fire. Envision the symptoms: burning sensations in the limbs, convulsions, hallucinations, gangrene in the extremities leading to loss of fingers or toes, and ultimately a slow, agonizing death. They wouldn't have understood the cause. They might have believed it was a curse or a divine judgment, not a consequence of their daily bread. Each bite taken to sustain life could instead be a step towards a terrible end. Imagine the fear and confusion that must have gripped communities when outbreaks occurred. Picture families gathered around their meager meals, unaware that the very food meant to nourish then could be their undoing. The bread that should have been a source of comfort and sustenance became a potential harbinger of doom. But the dangers didn't end with ergot, my friend, beyond the fields. The perils continued due to poor storage and general grain contamination picture. Rudimentary granaries, often damp, vulnerable to pests, and lacking proper ventilation, these were the conditions in which their precious harvest was kept. Grain once harvested was stored for months, sometimes years. These conditions were ideal for the growth of mold fungi and the proliferation of rodents and insects, all of which could further contaminate the grain. The lack of proper pest control meant that rodent droppings could carry diseases like the plague, which would then be spread through the food chain or direct contact. Imagine the constant presence of these unseen dangers in their most basic foodstuff. Every loaf of bread, every bowl of gruel carried a potential risk. This pervasive problem meant that even the most fundamental act of nourishment, eating your daily meal, could be a fatal activity. In 1400, it was a silent, insidious threat woven into the very fabric of their sustenance, a constant reminder of the unseen perils that surrounded their lives. Picture a medieval kitchen dimly lit by flickering candlelight, the air thick with the aroma of freshly baked bread, a smell that should bring comfort but instead might herald disaster. The baker unaware of the potential danger in their craft kneading, dough made from contaminated flour, each loaf a potential vessel for illness or worse. Isn't it wild to think about how something that's supposed to keep us alive, like bread, can also turn into something dangerous? I mean, daily bread is literally a staple for so many of us, right? But it can also hide some pretty scary secrets, like mold or contamination. This really hits home when you consider how fragile life can be, especially back in the day when even the simplest things like food were not guaranteed. Imagine having to worry about whether your meal might make you sick. It just goes to show how we often take our basic needs for granted, and it makes you appreciate every bite a little more, doesn't it? Imagine the desperation of a poor family in a time of famine, forced to consume moldy bread, knowing the risks, but having no other choice to gnawing hunger overriding the fear of potential illness. It's a testament to the harsh realities of life in 1400, where survival often meant taking calculated risks with one's health. Think about the long-term effects of these contaminated foods on the population's chronic illnesses. Weakened immune systems stunted, growth all potentially stemming from the very substance meant to give them strength, the bread. That should have been a blessing, becoming a curse passed down through generations. Picture the fields of rye swaying in the breeze, a sight that should inspire hope for a bountiful harvest, but instead might fill the knowledgeable with dread, knowing the potential for ergot contamination. It's a poignant illustration of how nature itself could turn against them, the very earth beneath their feet, conspiring to make their sustenance dangerous. Consider the social implications of these foodborne illnesses. Outbreaks of ergotism could lead to mass hysteria, accusations of witchcraft or divine punishment, communities torn apart by fear and suspicion, all stemming from a simple fungus growing on their grain. That's a stark reminder of how lack of understanding could lead to devastating consequences. Imagine the frustration of healers and wise women of the time trying to treat these mysterious ailments without understanding their true cause, their remedies often ineffective against the powerful toxins lurking in the bread. It's a testament to the limitations of medical knowledge in 1400 and the helplessness they must have felt in the face of these seemingly random afflictions. Think about the long-term economic impact of these contaminated foods, failed harvests, due to ergot infestations could lead to widespread famine and economic collapse, the very foundation of their society quite literally rotting from within. It's a sobering thought that something as small as a fungus could have such far-reaching consequences. Imagine the traders and merchants back in the day, completely unaware that they were spreading contaminated grain far and wide. Each sale was like a ticking time bomb, potentially unleashing illness and even death on unsuspecting communities. It's a pretty chilling thought, right? This really highlights how interconnected their world was, even back then. Just think about it. Disease could hitch a ride along those trade routes, traveling from one place to another, like it was no big deal. It's a stark reminder of how fragile our health can be in the face of commerce and connection. So, what do you think? Pretty wild to consider how history echoes into our lives today. Imagine living with the constant anxiety of not knowing if what's on your plate is safe to eat. Every meal could feel like a gamble, right? The fear that today's bread might turn into tomorrow's poison is just wild. We can't even begin to grasp that level of stress. Nowadays, we have food safety regulations and quality control that give us peace of mind. But back then, it was a whole different ball game. Just think about it. People must have been on edge, always second-guessing their meals. It's hard to believe how much we take for granted in our modern world, isn't it? Think about all those rituals and superstitions that popped up around bread making and eating. People really believed that certain practices could keep evil spirits at bay, especially when illness struck. It's fascinating, right? This shows just how deeply humans try to make sense of a confusing world, even when faced with dangers that seem totally beyond our control. Like, can you imagine someone tossing salt over their shoulder while kneading dough, hoping to ward off bad vibes? It's a vivid reminder of our need for comfort and understanding in tough times. Imagine the sheer resilience of those medieval folks. Despite the constant risks lurking around every corner, they kept on planting, harvesting, and enjoying their daily bread. It's honestly mind-blowing, right? This determination speaks volumes about the human spirit and our incredible will to survive, even when the odds are stacked against us. Just think about it. They faced famine, disease, and invasions, yet they persevered. Their grit and tenacity are truly inspiring. As we dive into the hidden dangers lurking in our daily lives, let's take a moment to think about something we often overlook. The clothes we wear. Sounds harmless, right? But trust me, there's a lot more going on than meets the eye. From toxic dyes to harmful chemicals, the fabric that hugs our skin can actually pose serious health risks. So stick around as we unravel the mystery of getting dressed, the toxic threads. We'll uncover just how these seemingly innocent garments can lead us into a whole new layer of trouble in the treacherous world of 1400. You won't want to miss it. Toxic dyes, lead, arsenic, mercury in clothing. Now, my friend, let us journey forward in time to the medieval world of 1400, where the seemingly innocent act of getting dressed held hidden dangers. Imagine that the vibrant colors adorning your clothing could be slowly poisoning you, a silent threat woven into the very fabric of daily life. Picture a bustling medieval town, its streets alive with people going about their day. Among them, a wealthy merchant's wife, resplendent in her new gown of deep emerald green. She admires her reflection, unaware that the very dye giving her dress its alluring hue contains arsenic, a deadly poison seeping into her skin with each passing moment. This was a world where beauty came at a terrible price. A creation of brightly colored fabrics relied heavily on natural, but often highly toxic dyes. Imagine the rich reds extracted from madder root or the deep blues derived from woad. But alongside these relatively harmless pigments were more exotic and dangerous concoctions. Envision a dyer's workshop filled with vats of bubbling liquids and a rainbow of hues. The air is thick with acrid fumes, and the workers' hands are stained with colors that will never truly wash away. They mix their dyes with lead to fix the colors, unaware that they are creating a lethal cocktail. Think of the pride a nobleman might feel, donning a tunic of brilliant yellow. Little does he know that the dye contains lead and chromium, slowly poisoning him with every wear. The vibrant purples favored by the wealthy often contained mercury, while the most vivid greens were notoriously made with arsenic compounds. Imagine a medieval person putting on these brightly colored garments. The dye, particularly if poorly fixed, could rub off onto their skin. Over time, these toxic substances would be absorbed directly through the pores or inhaled as tiny particles if the garment shed dust. The exposure might be slow, almost imperceptible, but it was relentless and cumulative. Picture a young apprentice working long hours in a poorly ventilated tailor's shop. He breathes in the dust from newly dyed fabrics day after day, never realizing that each breath brings him closer to a premature death. The vivid colors that bring him such joy are slowly destroying his lungs and poisoning his blood. And the risk was amplified by the typical living conditions of the time. Poor ventilation in homes meant that toxic particles lingered in the air, settling on skin and being inhaled with every breath. Imagine a family huddled around a smoky hearth in winter, their brightly colored clothes releasing a constant stream of invisible poisons into the already thick air. Think about the constant skin absorption of these chemicals. A laborer sweating under the hot sun, his dyed tunic leaching toxins directly into his pores. Or a lady of the court, her skin damp beneath layers of richly colored fabric during a long evening of dancing. The very sweat of their bodies caused the dyes to release their poisons more readily. Envision a medieval home, small and often unventilated. The family's prized possessions, their colorful clothing, hang on pegs or lie folded in chests. But even when not worn, these garments posed a continuous threat. The air in the home would be filled with microscopic particles shed from the fabric, a toxic dust settling on every surface. Consider the silent, insidious nature of this peril. A beautiful gown, a vibrant tunic, objects of pride and status could slowly be undermining the wearer's health. This everyday activity of simply putting on clothes chosen for beauty or warmth could be a fatal one in 1400, a constant, unnoticed threat permeating their very existence. Imagine a noblewoman admiring her collection of fine dresses. Each one represents a small fortune, a symbol of her wealth and taste. Yet each is also a ticking time bomb of toxicity. The deep crimsons achieved through the use of mercury-based vermilion, the shimmering golds containing lead pigments, all slowly poisoning her with every wear. Think of the children, dressed in miniature versions of adult clothing, their small bodies even more susceptible to the toxic effects of these dyes. A young boy proudly wearing his first pair of brightly colored hose, unaware that the dye is slowly damaging his developing nervous system. Picture a group of monks, their robes dyed in deep, rich hues to reflect the glory of God. The irony that these holy garments, meant to symbolize purity and devotion, could be slowly killing them. The vibrant blues of their habits, achieved through the use of copper-based pigments, gradually accumulating in their bodies over years of wear. Envision a medieval market, stalls filled with bolts of brightly colored cloth. Merchants tout the vivid hues as signs of quality and luxury. Customers run their hands over the fabrics, breathing in the dust, absorbing tiny amounts of poison with each touch. The very act of shopping for new clothes becomes a hazardous endeavor. Think about the cumulative effect of this constant exposure. Over months and years, these toxins would build up in the body, leading to chronic illness, neurological damage, and organ failure. Imagine the confusion and fear as people fell ill with mysterious ailments, never connecting their suffering to the vivid colors of their finest clothes. Picture a physician of the time puzzling over a patient's symptoms. The gradual weakening, the tremors, the failing eyesight, all classic signs of heavy metal poisoning. But in a world where the link between clothing dyes and illness was unknown, such cases would have seemed baffling and untreatable. Consider the social implications of this hidden danger. The wealthy, able to afford the most vividly dyed clothing, would ironically be exposing themselves to greater risk. Their very symbols of status and power could be hastening their demise. Meanwhile, the poor, often limited to undyed or naturally colored fabrics, might have inadvertently protected themselves from this particular threat. Imagine the long-term consequences for a medieval society where so many folks were unwittingly being poisoned by their clothing. It's a real eye-opener, right? Just think about it. Those subtle cognitive impairments from lead and mercury. Exposure could have totally messed with decision-making everywhere, from kings making laws to craftsmen trying to create their best work. And as people's health started to take a nosedive, they became more susceptible to all sorts of other illnesses. This probably meant that life expectancy took a serious hit. Can you picture a world where the very clothes you wore could cloud your judgment and impact your entire community? It's wild. Imagine the craftsmen and artisans back in the day, right? They were surrounded by these toxic substances day in and day out. Think about the weavers, dyers, and tailors literally handling poisonous materials with their bare hands. Can you believe it? They were inhaling toxic fumes for hours on end, all while trying to create beautiful fabrics. Their workshops were often crammed into busy urban areas, which means they might have been spreading these poisons all around, affecting entire neighborhoods. It's a pretty chilling thought, isn't it? The very fabric of their lives was woven with danger, and they had no clue about the risks they were facing every single day. It's wild to think how they were crafting beauty while surrounded by such hidden hazards. Imagine the slow, painful realization that creeps in over decades. Certain professions seem to carry a dark cloud of ill health and early death. It's like a heavy weight, right? People start connecting the dots between the vibrant, brilliant colors they worked with and those mysterious ailments that just wouldn't go away. Think about painters and their toxic pigments, or miners inhaling harmful dust daily. It's heartbreaking. But in a world where these jobs were essential for survival, many felt trapped. They knew the risks, yet they struggled to put food on the table, often overshadowed their fears. It's a tough spot, isn't it? As we contemplate this hidden peril of medieval life, we are reminded of the often invisible dangers that lurked in everyday existence. They wore their dangers close to their skin, unaware of the invisible poisons they carried. The vivid colors that brought such joy and pride were a double-edged sword, beautifying their world while silently undermining their health. Unlit streets and open sewers. Now, my friend, let us venture forth into the perilous world of medieval streets, where every step could lead to unseen danger. Imagine, if you will, the darkness that enveloped towns and cities as the sun dipped below the horizon. In the year 1400, there were no streetlights to guide your way, no electric signs to cast a comforting glow. As night fell, the world was plunged into an inky blackness that would make even the bravest soul hesitate. Imagine this, my friend. You're trying to make your way through these tricky paths, right? The ground is all over the place. Some parts are cobbled, while others are just rough dirt. It's like a puzzle where the pieces keep changing. Your eyes are working overtime, trying to spot all the hidden bumps and dips, but the darkness is just swallowing everything up. Every step you take feels like a leap of faith, hoping your foot lands somewhere solid and safe. You can almost feel your heart racing, can't you? It's that mix of excitement and fear that makes each moment feel so alive. But the darkness isn't the only danger lurking in these medieval streets. Picture this: open sewers snaking through the towns where raw sewage and household waste just flow freely. Can you imagine the smell? It must have been unbearable. And it wasn't just gross, it was a serious health risk. People had to dodge these nasty channels while trying to go about their daily lives. You know, it's wild to think about how something as basic as sanitation was such a struggle back then. The streets were basically a game of avoid the muck, and let's be real, who wants to deal with that? As you walk, the putrid odor assails your nostrils, a constant reminder of the filth that surrounds you. But it is not just your sense of smell that is under assault. With each step, you must be vigilant, for a single misstep could send you tumbling into a cesspit or tripping over debris hidden in the gloom. The consequences of such a fall could be dire indeed. In this world of primitive and unsanitary medical care, even a simple broken limb could lead to a life-threatening infection. Imagine the weight of this knowledge pressing down on you as you navigate the darkened streets. Every little journey, even just popping over to a neighbor's house or making a quick run to the local inn, feels like a heart-pounding adventure. You know what I mean? It's like every step you take is a test of courage and skill, a dance with danger lurking in the shadows. Think about it, the flickering streetlights casting eerie shadows, the rustle of leaves that could be anything from a harmless breeze to something more sinister. It's enough to make your heart race. And let's not forget those moments when you hear footsteps behind you, and you can't help but glance over your shoulder, right? That feeling of being on edge, it's almost like you're in a thriller movie. Each trip transforms into a mini quest, where bravery is your best companion. How wild is that? The dangers of the streets went beyond just physical hazards. Crime was like a shadow that never left these medieval towns. Imagine wandering through those dimly lit streets, where every corner could hide a thief or worse. With no modern police to keep things in check, the alleys were a playground for all sorts of troublemakers. You had cut purses ready to snatch your coin purse without you even noticing, and who knows what else was lurking in the darkness. It was a time when you had to stay alert, always watching your back, because trust me, those shadows held secrets that could turn a simple stroll into a nightmare. Imagine this, my friend. You're walking alone through these sketchy streets, right? The air feels thick with tension, and your ears are straining to catch any sound of footsteps sneaking up behind you. Every little noise makes your heart race and your eyes dart from shadow to shadow, desperately searching for any hint of movement. That coin purse you're carrying, it suddenly feels like a lead weight, and you can't shake the feeling that it's a shiny target for anyone looking to score. You might even start thinking about those stories you've heard people getting robbed or worse. It's a real gut check moment, isn't it? You just want to get home safe, but the thrill of the unknown keeps you on edge. For travelers and those who had to brave the streets after dark, the fear of assault or robbery was always lurking around. Can you imagine? Each dimly lit corner could hide a potential attacker, and every shadowy figure might be a threat waiting to pounce. Just stepping outside turned into a real test of courage and awareness, right? It was like a never-ending battle against the hidden dangers that seemed to be hiding in every little nook and cranny of the medieval world. People had to stay alert, clutching their belongings tightly, and maybe even stick to well-lit paths or travel in groups. It was all about survival, and you could feel the tension in the air. But even in the light of day, the streets held their own unique perils. Imagine the bustling market streets, crowded with people, animals, and vehicles of all kinds. Carts rumble by, their wheels threatening to crush unwary toes. Horses pull heavy loads, their powerful bodies a constant danger to those who might stray too close. In this chaotic scene, a moment's distraction could spell disaster. A cart wheel might catch your foot, crushing bone and flesh alike. A startled horse could rear up, its hooves flailing dangerously close to your head. The press of bodies around you makes escape difficult, each movement a careful negotiation of space and safety. And let us not forget, dear listener, the dangers posed by animals both domestic and wild. In the towns and cities, packs of unrestrained dogs roamed freely, their teeth a constant threat to unwary passers-by. A wrong move or a misinterpreted gesture could result in a painful and potentially deadly bite. In the countryside, the dangers were even more pronounced. Imagine walking along a lonely road, the forest pressing close on either side. The rustling of leaves might be nothing more than the wind, or it might herald the approach of a hungry wolf or bear, driven by desperation to venture closer to human settlements. These encounters with wild animals were not mere flights of fancy, but very real and often fatal occurrences. The medieval world was one where the line between civilization and wilderness was thin indeed, and those who ventured outside the relative safety of town walls did so at their own peril. Now, my friend, consider the constant, subtle vigilance required to simply move about in this world. Every step, every movement carried with it the potential for injury, attack, or unforeseen danger. The simple act of walking outside, whether to fetch water from the well, visit a friend, or travel to market, could easily become a fatal endeavor. This was the reality of life in 1400, a constant reminder of the pervasive physical threats that accompanied their daily existence. They navigated a world where every step held a degree of quiet peril, where the simple act of leaving one's home was an exercise in courage and caution. Imagine the mental toll this must have taken on the people of the time. The constant awareness of danger, the need to be alert and vigilant at all times, would have shaped their very perception of the world around them. Every shadow held potential threats, every unfamiliar sound a possible harbinger of doom. Yet despite these dangers, life went on. People still ventured out, still conducted their daily business, still found moments of joy and connection amidst the perils that surrounded them. It is a testament to the resilience of the human spirit, the ability to adapt and thrive even in the face of constant danger. As we leave behind the echoes of cautious footsteps on cobblestone streets, let us turn our attention to another aspect of daily life that carried its own shocking risks. For even within the relative safety of their homes, medieval people faced dangers that we, in our modern world, can scarcely imagine. Consider, if you will, the simple act of preparing a meal. In our time, we take for granted the safety of our food, the cleanliness of our cooking utensils, the purity of our water. But in the medieval world, each of these elements carried with it the potential for disaster. Imagine standing in a dimly lit kitchen, preparing to cook a meal for your family. The ingredients before you may seem innocent enough: vegetables from the garden, meat from the market, grain for bread. But hidden within these simple foodstuffs lurk unseen dangers, contaminants that could bring illness or even death to those who consume them. The water you use to wash your vegetables and mix your dough comes from a well that may be contaminated by the very sewage that flows through the streets outside. The meat, lacking modern preservation techniques, may already be starting to spoil, harboring bacteria that could cause severe illness. Even the utensils you use to prepare your meal carry their own risks. Made of wood or poorly cleaned metal, they provide the perfect breeding ground for harmful microorganisms. Each cut of your knife, each stir of your spoon, could be introducing new contaminants into the food you so carefully prepare. As you tend to your cooking fire, the smoke fills the poorly ventilated room, irritating your eyes and lungs. The constant exposure to this smoke, day after day, year after year, takes its toll on your health in ways you cannot even begin to comprehend. And yet, despite these dangers, despite the constant threat of illness or worse, you must cook. Your family must eat. And so you continue, day after day, preparing meals in this environment of unseen peril, never knowing which meal might be the one that brings sickness to your household. This, my friend, was the reality of life in medieval times. Every aspect of daily existence, from the clothes on their backs to the food on their tables, carried with it hidden dangers. It was a world where survival itself was a daily challenge, where the simplest tasks could lead to dire consequences. As we ponder these quiet perils of medieval life, let us be grateful for the advances that have made our own world so much safer. And let us remember those who came before us, who faced these dangers with courage and resilience, paving the way for the comforts and safety we enjoy today. Lack of refrigeration and food spoilage. Now, my friend, let us turn our attention to a seemingly mundane, yet surprisingly perilous aspect of daily life in the year 1400, the simple act of cooking food. Picture yourself in a medieval kitchen, a place where the line between nourishment and danger was perilously thin. Imagine preparing a meal without the most fundamental modern convenience for food safety refrigeration. In 1400, there was a complete absence of this technology that we now take for granted. Food preservation relied on methods like salting, smoking, drying, or pickling, but fresh ingredients were highly perishable. Think of meat, fish, or dairy products exposed to the whims of ambient temperatures fluctuating with the weather, without cooling. Harmful bacteria would multiply at an alarming rate. Consider the subtle changes in food that medieval people might have noticed a slight off-putting odor, and unusual texture, but they lacked our understanding of the microscopic world. They couldn't see the rapid growth of dangerous pathogens lurking within their meals. Each bite, carefully prepared to sustain life, held an invisible gamble with death. Eating spoiled food, even if it was cooked, could lead to severe food poisoning, dysentery, violent bouts of vomiting, and extreme dehydration. In an era of primitive medicine, these conditions were often fatal. The dangers didn't end with spoilage, my friend. Cross-contamination and poor storage practices were pervasive threats. Picture a medieval kitchen, often shared by humans and animals alike. Surfaces might be wiped down with basic water, but never truly sanitized. Raw meat could easily come into contact with cooked vegetables. Hands might not be thoroughly washed between tasks, if at all. Flies, those ubiquitous pests found in every home, would flit between waste and prepared food, carrying invisible pathogens on their tiny legs. Leftovers, if kept at all, would be stored in warm conditions, allowing any surviving bacteria to multiply rapidly. The very environment of food preparation, lacking our modern understanding of hygiene and temperature control, was a constant source of risk. Think about the subtle, cumulative nature of these perils. A simple meal intended to provide comfort and sustenance could become a source of intense suffering. This everyday activity of cooking food, a fundamental act of care and survival, could be a fatal one in 1400. It was a silent threat woven into the very fabric of their sustenance, a constant reminder of the unseen dangers that pervaded their lives. Imagine the uncertainty that must have plagued every mealtime, the joy of a shared feast tempered by the nagging fear of what unseen horrors might lurk within the dishes. A mother preparing food for her children would have no way of knowing if her loving act might inadvertently bring harm to those she sought to nourish. Consider the long-term effects of this constant exposure to foodborne pathogens. Weakened immune systems, chronic illnesses, and shortened lifespans were the unseen cost of simply trying to survive. Each meal was a roll of the dice with potentially dire consequences. Now picture the seasonal challenges that further complicated food safety. In the heat of summer, meat would spoil even more quickly, while winter brought its own set of problems with limited access to fresh produce, the cycle of feast and famine that characterized medieval life meant that when food was plentiful, the temptation to overindulge could lead to even greater risks of contamination and illness. Think of the social implications of these hidden dangers. Sharing food was a cornerstone of medieval hospitality, but it also meant sharing risk. A grand banquet could become a source of widespread illness, affecting an entire community. The very acts meant to bring people together could unwittingly tear them apart. Imagine the helplessness of watching a loved one fall ill after a meal, knowing that there was little you could do to help them. The lack of understanding about the true causes of foodborne illnesses meant that superstition and misguided remedies often took the place of effective treatment. Consider how this constant threat might have shaped the medieval mindset, the fragility of life ever present in their minds as they went about the simple act of preparing and consuming food. It's a stark reminder of how far we've come in our understanding of food safety and hygiene. Yet even in these challenging conditions, human ingenuity found ways to adapt. Traditional cooking methods evolved to help mitigate some of these risks. Long cooking times for meats, the use of strong spices, and the development of fermented foods all played a role in making meals, safer albeit often by accident rather than design. Picture the smoky interiors of medieval homes where food hung from rafters, slowly curing in the constant haze, the pungent smell of herbs and spices, not just for flavor, but as nature's preservatives. The rhythmic sound of churning as milk was transformed into cheese, extending its usability and reducing the risk of spoilage. Imagine the collective wisdom passed down through generations, grandmothers teaching granddaughters, the signs of food gone bad, the best methods for storage, the importance of thorough cooking. These were not just culinary lessons, but survival skills essential for navigating the dangerous world of medieval food preparation. Think of the irony that some of our most beloved traditional dishes and preservation techniques were born out of this necessity to combat food spoilage and contamination. The rich flavors of cured meats, the tang of pickled vegetables, the complexity of aged cheeses all have their roots in these ancient struggles for food safety. Thinking about medieval life really makes you appreciate how far we've come, doesn't it? Just consider the simple act of opening a refrigerator. It's wild to think that back then, people had to deal with food spoilage without any of our modern conveniences. Using a sanitized cutting board, that's a game changer. It's like a little miracle of progress, showing us how centuries of scientific discoveries and tech innovations have transformed our kitchens into safe, efficient spaces. So next time you slice up some veggies or grab a cold drink, take a moment to marvel at how lucky we are. Taking a moment to appreciate how far we've come in food safety is so important, right? But here's the kicker. For many folks around the globe, food contamination is still a scary reality they face every single day. Can you even imagine that? It's like stepping back in time. Think about it, our medieval ancestors had to deal with spoiled food and diseases like the plague. And honestly, those struggles aren't as far removed from us as we might think. In places where clean water and proper sanitation are still a dream, people are risking their health just to eat. Contaminated water sources and unsafe food handling practices can lead to serious illnesses. It's wild to think that something as basic as a meal can be so dangerous. So while we enjoy our safe and tasty food, let's remember those who are still fighting for the basics. It's a real eye-opener. In some places, people still deal with unsafe water and unregulated food sources, which can lead to serious health issues. It's a stark reminder that while we celebrate our progress, we need to keep pushing for better food safety standards everywhere. Let's not lose sight of the ongoing challenges that affect so many lives. As those wild medieval feasts fade from our minds, let's dive into another quiet yet super risky part of life back in the 1400s. So when sickness hit, what did people actually do? Picture this: no fancy hospitals or quick access to doctors. Instead, they turned to herbal remedies like chamomile for stomach aches or willow bark for pain relief. But here's the kicker: sometimes they relied on superstitions or local healers who might have been just as likely to make things worse. Can you imagine the mix of hope and fear they felt? It was a real gamble. Picture a small village where folks gathered around to discuss their ailments, hoping for a miracle cure. Some might try a potion brewed from strange herbs, while others sought help from a traveling quack who claimed to have the secret to wellness. It was a real gamble, you know. The cure could be just as dangerous as the disease. How crazy is that? Imagine this. You're feeling awful, maybe with a nasty fever or a terrible cough. you'd probably head to the local doctor, right? But hold on. Back then, many doctors had limited knowledge and relied on some pretty wild treatments. Think bloodletting or herbal concoctions that could make you feel worse. Join me, my friend, as we explore this risky world of medieval medicine and the real dangers of visiting a doctor in an age where knowledge was scarce and survival was anything but guaranteed. What a time to be alive, huh? Bloodletting and primitive surgery. Now, my friend, let us delve into the perilous world of medieval medicine, where seeking a cure could be as dangerous as the ailment itself. Imagine, if you will, the year 1400, a time when medical knowledge was rudimentary at best, and treatments were often based on ancient theories like the balance of humors in the body. Picture a dimly lit room where a doctor, perhaps a barber surgeon, stands, ready to perform one of the most common and widely practiced treatments, bloodletting. The air is thick with the scent of fear and anticipation as the patient extends their arm. The practitioner skillfully opens a vein, allowing what they believed to be bad blood to flow freely. This was done for almost any ailment, from fevers to headaches, the very essence of life draining away in the name of healing. But my friend, this practice that was supposed to heal could actually lead to some serious issues like extreme weakness, shock, and dangerously low blood pressure. Just picture it for a second. You're feeling your strength slip away with every drop of blood spilled. It's terrifying, right? The room starts to spin, and your body is in this frantic struggle to cope with the loss. Yet, believe it or not, this was once seen as a standard treatment, a necessary evil in the quest for better health. Can you imagine trusting a method that makes you feel like you're fading away? It's wild to think how far we've come in understanding what true healing looks like. Imagine this, primitive surgery, right? Oh, the sheer horrors that awaited anyone who needed it. Picture operations done without anesthesia. Can you even fathom that? Just think about it. No one had a clue about internal anatomy back then, and sterilization? Forget it. The air would be thick with the screams of agony as crude tools sliced through flesh and bone. Amputations and setting broken bones were brutal, excruciating processes that often left patients in a worse state than before. It was a terrifying gamble where survival was anything but guaranteed. People must have felt like they were stepping into a nightmare every time they needed help. Just wild, isn't it? Each attempt at a cure was a gamble, a desperate roll of the dice that could easily lead to a worse outcome than the disease itself. The very hands meant to heal could unknowingly deliver the final blow, a testament to the profound ignorance that surrounded their medical practices. But my friend, the dangers didn't just stop with the treatment itself. Oh no, lurking in the shadows was an even scarier threat that the doctors of that time couldn't even begin to grasp. Can you imagine the sheer lack of hygiene back then? It was like a perfect storm of ignorance. Think about it. No understanding of germs or infections, and surgical tools often weren't even cleaned properly. It's wild to picture doctors operating without any gloves or masks, right? They were just winging it, which made the whole situation even riskier for patients. It's a wonder anyone made it through those procedures at all. Picture surgical instruments never sterilized, simply wiped clean with a cloth already soiled from previous use wounds, dressed with unwashed rags, teeming with invisible microbes eager to invade the vulnerable flesh. Doctors, moving from one patient to another, from a cadaver to a living person, without so much as rinsing their hands. The very concept of germs and bacteria was completely unknown, a world of microscopic killers hidden from view, yet ever present. Every cut, every opening in the skin became a direct invitation for deadly infection. What might have been a survivable injury or illness could quickly turn fatal due to gangrene sepsis or other opportunistic invaders. Imagine the quiet desperation of someone reaching out for help, just trying to get through the day while battling their suffering. Picture this: visiting the doctor, a simple act filled with hope. But back in the 1400s, it could turn into a nightmare. Instead of healing, patients often faced practices that made things worse. It's like walking into a trap where an illness could quickly morph into a death sentence. Can you believe that? The very place meant to provide relief could lead to despair. Imagine the scene: a worried mother brings her feverish child to the local healer, hoping for relief. Instead, she watches in horror as her beloved offspring grows weaker with each treatment, the child's pale skin growing ever more ashen as infection takes hold. Or picture a strong young man laid low by a simple cut, now fighting for his life as the wound festers and swells, a victim not of his initial injury, but of the very attempts to treat it. The air in those makeshift hospitals was absolutely thick with the stench of decay and disease. Can you imagine? The moans of the suffering echoed off the cold stone walls, creating this haunting symphony of human misery. Each patient told a story, a real-life example of the harsh realities of medieval medicine. It was like a double-edged sword, you know? Some treatments were truly bizarre, like bloodletting or using leeches, which often did more harm than good. It's hard to fathom how people survived in such conditions, right? Each room was a stark reminder of how far we've come in healthcare, but also a glimpse into the desperation of those times. And yet, my friend, in this world of medical peril, there were those who sought to understand, to learn, to heal. Truly imagine the frustration of those few enlightened minds who began to question the accepted practices, who dared to suggest that perhaps there was more to healing than balancing humors or bleeding patients dry. These pioneers often faced ridicule and persecution, their ideas dismissed as heresy or madness. Imagine a young apprentice in a bustling hospital, eyes wide with disbelief as they watch yet another patient fall victim to an infection after what seemed like a routine procedure. It's gut-wrenching, right? Each preventable death leaves a mark, planting a seed of doubt that grows bigger and bigger in their mind. This experience becomes the catalyst for change, igniting a fierce desire to understand why this is happening. It's the start of a long, challenging journey toward modern medical practices. Think about it. The road was filled with trials and errors, countless debates and breakthroughs that shaped the future of medicine. It wasn't just about saving lives. It was about transforming an entire system. The apprentice's struggle is a reminder of how far we've come and the price of progress. As we ponder the risks of seeking medical care in medieval times, let us not forget that for many this was their only hope, however slim, in a world where even minor ailments could prove fatal. The desperate would turn to any promise of relief, no matter how dangerous. Imagine the weight of responsibility on the shoulders of these medieval healers, many of whom truly believed in the efficacy of their treatments. The guilt and confusion as patient after patient slipped away. Despite their best efforts, this too was part of the everyday experience of medieval medicine, a constant dance with death, where the line between healer and harbinger of doom was perilously thin. And so, my friend, as we leave behind the blood-soaked chambers of medieval doctors, let us turn our gaze to another aspect of daily life in 1400 that carried its own hidden dangers, for in the bustling markets and crowded streets lurked yet another threat to life and limb. The throng of disease awaited those who dared to venture into public spaces. Imagine, if you will, the press of bodies in a medieval marketplace, the air thick with the mingled sense of unwashed humanity, rotting produce and animal waste. This was a breeding ground for illness, a place where a simple trip to buy bread could result in exposure to deadly pathogens. Picture the scene: merchants calling out their wares, hands exchanging coins, food changing hands, all without a thought to the invisible threat that passed between them with each transaction. The very act of commerce became a vector for disease, spreading illness far and wide with terrifying efficiency. In these bustling, crowded spaces, there's another danger lurking, right? Picture this: pickpockets and cut purses gliding through the throngs, their fingers moving like lightning to swipe your hard-earned cash without you even noticing. It's wild how quickly they can strike. And let's not forget the unsettling vibe of potential violence hanging in the air. It's like a pressure cooker, ready to blow at the tiniest spark. You can almost feel that tension, can't you? You never know who might lose their cool and cause chaos. It's a reminder to stay alert and keep your belongings close. Imagine, my friend, living in medieval times, a world where every single choice you made could lead to total chaos. Picture this: you're just trying to get help for a sick family member, and suddenly you find yourself caught up in a scandal or a feud. It sounds wild, right? Yet, despite all this madness, life didn't just stop. People found ways to keep going, to laugh, and to connect with one another. They celebrated small victories, shared stories by the fire, and formed tight-knit communities. Even when faced with hardships, they discovered little pockets of joy, like a festival or a simple gathering that reminded them they weren't alone. It's truly inspiring how they persevered through such tough times, isn't it? As we think about these tough realities, it's pretty amazing to reflect on how our ancestors faced their challenges head-on. They lived in a world filled with dangers, from the gruesome practices of medieval medicine to the chaos of crowded marketplaces. Can you imagine? Yet their bravery and grit laid the groundwork for the safer, more advanced world we enjoy today. It's a reminder that their struggles weren't in vain. They shaped our lives in ways we often take for granted. So, let's honor their legacy and appreciate how far we've come. Crowded conditions and rapid disease spread. Now, my friend, let us venture into the bustling heart of medieval life, the marketplace, a scene of vibrant commerce and community, but also a hidden breeding ground for deadly illnesses. Picture, if you will, the crowded conditions of a market in 1400 throngs of people packed tightly together, with no concept of personal space or disease transmission. Every cough, every sneeze, every casual touch could be an exchange of invisible pathogens. The very act of buying and selling became a constant exposure to whatever illnesses lurked within the population. In such close proximity, diseases could spread with astonishing speed. Imagine a single individual carrying a common cold, quickly infecting dozens around them. And for more serious ailments like the plague or measles, the market became a super spreader event of terrifying proportions. The vibrant heart of the community could swiftly become the engine of its undoing. But the dangers at the market were not limited to the press of bodies. Consider the unsanitary practices at food stalls. open-air displays with meats and produce exposed to flies, dust, and countless hands. No refrigeration for perishables, no concept of food-grade surfaces or sterile preparation. Raw meat might be handled alongside cooked goods. Vegetables could be contaminated by unwashed hands or by animals roaming freely through the market area. Vendors often lacked access to clean water for washing their hands or their wares. Any illness carried by a merchant could easily pass to a customer through the very food they purchased to sustain their family. A simple transaction, buying a wheel of cheese or a joint of meat, could introduce a deadly pathogen into your household. Think about this unseen chain of transmission. This everyday activity of going to market a vital source of sustenance and connection could be a fatal gamble in 1400. A trip for provisions might end in bringing home far more than you bargained for. Now imagine the long-term consequences of such conditions, generation after generation, exposed to this constant risk of infection. The strongest survived, but at what cost? How many brilliant minds were lost to diseases that spread unchecked through these crowded marketplaces? How many families were torn apart by illnesses contracted during a simple shopping trip, and yet the markets persisted. They were too vital to medieval life to be abandoned. Despite the dangers, they remained the lifeblood of communities, the place where news was exchanged, goods were traded, and social bonds were forged. People came knowing the risks because the alternative, isolation and scarcity, was even more frightening. Consider, too, the impact on trade and economy. Merchants traveling from town to town, market to market, could unwittingly become vectors for disease spread. A trader from a far-off land might bring exotic goods, but also exotic illnesses. The very interconnectedness that allowed medieval society to flourish could also be its greatest vulnerability. Picture a typical market day. The air filled with the shouts of vendors, the bleating of livestock, the chatter of gossip. But beneath this lively scene lurked an invisible threat. Every handshake, every coin passed from palm to palm. Every shared cup of ale was a potential pathway for disease. The medieval market was a microcosm of the larger challenges facing society at the time, a place of opportunity and danger, of community and contagion. It highlighted the delicate balance between the need for human interaction and the ever-present specter of illness. As we reflect on these bustling yet perilous marketplaces, we gain a deeper appreciation for the advances in public health and sanitation that we often take for granted today. The simple act of washing hands or refrigerating food, innovations unheard of in medieval times, have saved countless lives. But let us not judge our ancestors too harshly. They were doing the best they could with the knowledge they had. The medieval market, for all its dangers, was a testament to human resilience and the enduring need for connection. Even in the face of unseen threats, people came together to trade, to socialize, to live. As the echoes of that bustling medieval marketplace start to fade, let's dive into something just as intriguing: what people actually lived in back in the 1400s. Can you imagine? Their homes were like a game of Jenga, teetering on the edge. These structures often had unstable walls and leaky roofs, and you wouldn't believe the fire hazards. Just picture a cozy little cottage, but with smoke billowing in from the fireplace, filling the air with soot. It's wild to think about how much risk was just part of everyday life for them. So come along as we uncover the hidden dangers lurking in those medieval homes. Imagine a typical dwelling in a medieval town constructed of wood thatch and wattle and daub. These homes were far from the solid structures we know today. They were often hastily built with little regard for safety or longevity. The threat of fire was ever present, with open hearths and tallow candles providing both necessary light and heat, but also constant danger. Roofs that were thatched with straw or reeds had a tough time. They were super vulnerable, not just to fire, but also to all sorts of weather and pesky pests. Imagine living in a medieval town where a leaky roof could cause rot, slowly weakening the whole place. And with everyone crammed together, a fire in one house could spread like wildfire, taking out entire neighborhoods in no time. It's wild to think about how quickly chaos could erupt, right? Consider, too, the lack of proper foundations. Many homes were built directly on the ground with no protection from rising damp or flooding. This led to perpetually damp conditions ideal for the growth of mold and fungi, silent invaders that could wreak havoc on both the structure of the home and the health of its inhabitants. The floors were often just packed dirt, covered with rushes which turned into perfect breeding grounds for fleas and all sorts of other creepy crawlies. Can you imagine living your everyday life on a layer of rotting plant matter, surrounded by buzzing insects and scurrying rodents? It's pretty gross to think about. The ground beneath you isn't just uncomfortable. It could easily make you sick. Just picture how hard it must have been to keep things clean and healthy in such conditions. Yikes. Windows, if they even existed, were tiny and sparse, leaving the interiors feeling dark and stuffy. Can you imagine? Smoke from cooking fires and heating braziers would hang in the air, creating this hazy, unhealthy vibe inside. It's like living in a cloud of your own making. These cramped conditions were just perfect for spreading respiratory illnesses, making even the simple act of breathing feel like a gamble with your health. You really had to think twice about taking a deep breath. Imagine living in cramped conditions where entire families squeeze into just one room. Privacy? Forget about it. That's a luxury most folks never even dream of. These tight spaces not only make everyday life super tough, but also create a perfect storm for spreading germs. If one person catches a bug, it's like a chain reaction. Everyone's getting sick. It's a real struggle, and you can just feel the tension building in such a close-knit environment. Can you imagine how stressful that must be? Imagine living in a place where proper sanitation is just a dream. Chamber pots were often emptied right into the streets or nearby rivers, turning them into disgusting messes. This not only contaminated the water, but also created perfect breeding grounds for disease-carrying insects, like mosquitoes. Can you picture that? The air around those homes must have been thick with the unbearable stench of human waste and decay. It's really hard to fathom how people manage to live in such awful conditions, right? Even with all the dangers lurking around, these little homes were so much more than just buildings. They were the heart of families where laughter echoed, children took their first steps, and memories were made. Can you imagine the warmth of a fire crackling in the hearth, the smell of bread baking, and the sound of loved ones gathering? These medieval homes, with all their quirks and imperfections, were true sanctuaries. They offered safety and a sense of belonging in a world that could be really tough and unforgiving. It was in these cozy spaces that communities thrived, bonds were formed, and lives were truly lived. When we take a moment to think about those shaky, unstable structures from the past, It really hits home how far we've come in architecture and building safety. I mean, just picture our solid walls, strong roofs, and reliable plumbing. These are things we totally take for granted today, right? But for our medieval ancestors, these were like wild dreams. They had to deal with drafty homes and leaky roofs, which makes you appreciate the cozy comfort we enjoy now. It's pretty wild to think about how those basic comforts were once unimaginable luxuries. Even in tough times, it's amazing how human creativity and adaptability really shine, right? People didn't just sit back and let the challenges win. They rolled up their sleeves and found clever ways to make their homes cozier and more inviting. Think about it, folks started using DIY projects to reinforce their houses, added insulation to keep the warmth in, and even got artsy with decorations that brought joy into their spaces. It's like they turned their struggles into something beautiful, creating little havens of comfort and style amidst the chaos. How inspiring is that? The medieval home, like the marketplace we explored earlier, was a reflection of the society that built it, a place of both comfort and danger, of family bonds and ever-present risks. It stands as a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the enduring desire for a place to call one his own. Poor construction methods and collapses. Now, my friend, let us turn our attention to the very foundations of medieval life, the homes that sheltered our ancestors. Picture, if you will, the humble dwellings of 1400 structures that offered refuge from the elements yet harbored hidden dangers within their very walls. Imagine a family settling in for the night in their timber-framed house. The flickering light of the hearth casts dancing shadows on walls made of wattle and daub. A thatched roof overhead promises protection from rain and wind. But beneath this seeming security lurks an unseen peril. In those days, construction methods were far from the sophisticated techniques we know today. There were no structural engineers, no building codes, no deep understanding of how materials behaved under stress. Homes were built with whatever was at hand. Timber, stone, mud, and straw foundations were often little more than leveled ground. Think of the craftsmen of the time working without precise measurements or modern tools. They relied on experience and tradition passed down through generations. But even the most skilled builder could not account for every variable, the shifting of the earth, the weakening of wood over time, the relentless assault of the elements. As years passed, these homes began to show their fragility. Walls might lean imperceptibly at first, then more noticeably. Floors could sag ceilings, develop ominous cracks, the very weight of the structure working against itself in a slow battle with gravity. Picture this, a heavy rainstorm just hammering down on these already fragile walls. You can almost hear the water seeping into every little crack, making them wider and wider, right? It's like the building is slowly giving in, softening at its core. And then, out of nowhere, a strong gust of wind comes rushing in. That could be the last straw, sending a roof beam crashing down or even causing a whole wall to just cave in. It's kind of eerie to think about how something as simple as weather can turn a once sturdy structure into a pile of rubble. You know, it really makes you appreciate the strength of a solid foundation. The danger wasn't always a loud, dramatic event. Sometimes it crept in slowly, like the earth shifting beneath your feet. Picture this. A family wakes up one morning to find their front door no longer fits its frame. It's a little unsettling, right? Or those windows that used to glide open with ease? Now they're stubbornly refusing to budge. These little signs are like whispers, hinting that their home is slowly failing them, turning from a safe haven into a source of anxiety. It's wild how something as simple as a door can signal deeper issues, isn't it? It makes you wonder how many families have faced a silent struggle, feeling their sanctuary slip away bit by bit. But it was often in the dark of night that tragedy struck most cruelly. Picture a sleeping household, jolted awake by the terrifying sound of splintering wood and crumbling stone. In an instant their sanctuary became a death trap, walls collapsing floors, giving way, trapping those within under a mountain of debris. The aftermath of such collapses was absolutely heart-wrenching. Neighbors would rush in, driven by sheer desperation, digging through the rubble with their bare hands, hoping against hope to find survivors. But too often, the grim reality set in as they uncovered only lifeless bodies, crushed by the very structures that were supposed to keep them safe. It's just devastating, right? Imagine the fear and sorrow that filled the air as families searched for their loved ones, praying for a miracle. The whole scene felt like a nightmare that no one could wake up from. Yet the perils of medieval homes extended beyond structural instability. Fire and ever-present danger in these dwellings lurked in every corner. Imagine the central hearth, the heart of the medieval home, a source of warmth and light, but also a constant threat. Imagine that open flame crackling away, sending those little sparks dancing into the air. Each tiny ember feels like a potential disaster waiting to happen, right? In homes made mostly of wood and thatch, those sparks have plenty of fuel to catch fire. Just think about it. One moment of distraction, and bam, catastrophe could strike. It's wild how quickly things can go from cozy warmth to a full-blown emergency. Like, remember those old stories where a single spark turned a whole village into ashes? It's a real reminder to stay vigilant and respect the power of fire. Imagine this. No fire alarms, no smoke detectors to wake up the people inside. No fire crews on standby to jump into action. Just a tiny flame that could turn into a raging inferno, swallowing up a whole home in just minutes. Scary, right? And in the tightly packed neighborhoods of medieval towns, fire spread with terrifying speed. Imagine the panic as flames leapt from one thatched roof to the next, creating a sea of fire that devoured entire streets. Residents would flee with only the clothes on their backs, watching helplessly as their homes and possessions were reduced to ash. The aftermath of those fires was absolutely heartbreaking. Entire communities were left homeless, livelihoods completely wiped out, and families torn apart by unimaginable loss. Can you even imagine the struggle? Yet they had no choice but to rebuild, often using the same vulnerable materials and risky methods. It's just the way of life they knew, right? Like they might have lost everything, but their spirit to rise again is truly inspiring. They gathered whatever they could, working together, hoping to create a sense of home again, even when the odds were stacked against them. Imagine the constant anxiety that must have gripped the medieval mind, right? Just think about it, the nagging fear that at any moment their cozy home could turn into a tomb. It's wild. A single spark from a candle or a stray ember could snatch away everything they held dear. This was the harsh reality back in 1400, when seeking shelter wasn't just about finding a roof over your head, it was a gamble. Picture families huddled together, always on edge, knowing that the warmth of their hearth could quickly become a raging fire. Can you even imagine living like that? It's no wonder that the idea of safety was a luxury, and every day felt like walking a tightrope between comfort and catastrophe. Even as we think about those physical dangers, my friend, let's not overlook the fact that threats also came in less obvious forms. In the medieval world, the power of words could slice through a crowd just as sharply as a sword. Think about it. A rumor could ruin a reputation, and a well-placed insult could spark a feud. Just like a collapsing wall or a raging fire, words had the potential to cause chaos and destruction, often leading to battles fought, not with weapons, but with sharp tongues and clever minds. It's fascinating, isn't it? Imagine a world where a carelessly spoken phrase or a story told in the wrong crowd could land you in serious trouble. I mean, just think about it. One slip-up could get you accused of heresy or treason. Picture being labeled an outcast or, even worse, facing the stake. It's like living in a constant state of fear, right? You'd have to walk on eggshells, carefully choosing your words, or risk everything. Just look at history. People have lost their lives over a simple disagreement or a misunderstood joke. It really makes you appreciate the freedom of speech we often take for granted today. This, my friend, brings us to our next chapter, the dangerous world where just speaking your mind can be a real gamble, you know? Imagine living in medieval times where even finding a safe place to sleep was a serious challenge. People were constantly on edge, worried about everything from bandits to the weather. A simple roof over your head could mean the difference between life and death. So let's take a moment to think about how tough it was back then, where every decision felt like a risk. Pretty wild, right? Blasphemy, heresy, and sedition. Now, my friend, let us turn our attention to a less tangible yet profoundly dangerous everyday activity, telling a story. Imagine that the very words you spoke, the ideas you shared, could lead to a swift and brutal end. Picture yourself in the year 1400, a time when society was highly stratified, deeply religious, and fiercely protective of its established order. Speaking your mind, sharing an opinion, or even telling a tale carried immense risk, especially if it touched upon sensitive topics. The air was thick with tension, and every conversation held the potential for disaster. Blasphemy, disrespecting God or sacred things could lead to severe punishment. Heresy, holding beliefs contrary to the Church's doctrine, was a capital offense, often resulting in burning at the stake. And sedition, speaking out against the monarch or the ruling powers, was treason punishable by execution. These were not mere abstract concepts, but very real threats that loomed over every interaction. Imagine the casual conversation in a tavern or a whispered complaint among neighbors. A loose word overheard by an informant or twisted by an enemy could ignite a terrifying accusation. There was no freedom of speech as we know it today. The wrong thought, the wrong idea spoken aloud could be swiftly and brutally condemned. Each shared tale, each voiced opinion held a silent yet potentially deadly risk. The dangers were amplified by the risk of false accusation and arbitrary punishment. Picture a world where a personal grudge, a neighbor's envy, or a desire for land could lead to a malicious accusation. Even without strong evidence, such an accusation could be enough to bring the full, terrifying force of medieval law down upon an innocent person. Trials were often unfair. Torture was used to extract confessions, and the presumption of innocence was often absent. Once accused, escape was nearly impossible. The process itself was a torment, often ending in public humiliation, imprisonment, or a gruesome execution, the chilling effectiveness of their justice system, combined with a climate of fear, meant that the simple act of expressing oneself, of telling a story or sharing an idea, could be a fatal one in 1400. The power of words, once a source of connection, could also be a swift bringer of doom. They lived in a world where their thoughts and words had lethal consequences. Imagine the weight of this knowledge pressing down on every interaction. Every conversation, every story shared was a delicate dance with danger. Words that in our time might be dismissed as harmless. Chatter could in that era spark a fire of accusation that could consume entire lives. The very act of opening one's mouth to speak carried with it an undercurrent of fear. Picture a group of villagers gathered around a fire on a cold winter's night, the flickering flames casting long shadows as they huddled close for warmth. One begins to tell a tale, perhaps an old legend passed down through generations. But even as the storyteller weaves their narrative, there's a tension in the air, an awareness that at any moment the wrong word, the wrong phrase, could turn this moment of communal bonding into a nightmare of accusation and retribution. The fear of dangerous words extended beyond mere casual conversation. It permeated every aspect of medieval life imagined, the careful consideration given to every letter written, every song sung, every play performed. Each had to be scrutinized for potential heresy, blasphemy, or sedition. Artists, writers, and performers walked a precarious tightrope balancing creative expression with the ever-present threat of punishment. Even in the supposed safety of their own homes, danger lurked around every corner. You know how it goes. Walls were paper thin, and neighbors were always on high alert, ready to report any hint of suspicious chatter. Families lived with this heavy weight, constantly aware that their private conversations could easily spiral into public accusations. It's wild, right? This constant atmosphere of suspicion and fear could twist even the tightest bonds into potential threats, turning friends into foes. Imagine having to watch what you say even to your loved ones. It's heartbreaking to think that trust could be shattered so easily. The power of dangerous words wasn't just a game for the common folk. It reached the highest echelons of society, too. Picture courtiers and nobles engaging in these elaborate verbal sparring matches, right? Every word was like a carefully chosen weapon, and each phrase was meticulously crafted. One wrong move in these high-stakes conversations could lead to personal ruin, but it could also stir up some serious political chaos. For example, a single careless comment could spark a feud that rippled through the entire court, affecting alliances and even the throne itself. It's wild to think how much weight those words carried, shaping destinies and shifting power dynamics in ways we can hardly imagine today. Imagine the pressure on those in power. Every single word they say is under a microscope, right? Just think about it. A careless slip could bring down a whole dynasty, and a misunderstood comment could spark a war. The stakes are sky high, and the tension is palpable in every diplomatic chat and royal announcement. It's like walking a tightrope where one wrong move could lead to chaos. For instance, remember when a leader's offhand remark about a trade deal led to economic turmoil? It's wild how much weight they carry. In this world of dangerous words, knowledge itself became a double-edged sword. Those who could read and write possessed a powerful tool, but one that could easily turn against them. Libraries were carefully guarded, their contents closely monitored. Books deemed heretical or seditious were destroyed, often along with those who possessed them. The pursuit of learning carried with it inherent risks, as new ideas could easily be branded as dangerous. Imagine the frustration of those curious minds, right? Those folks who just wanted to dive into new ideas and share their innovative thoughts. It's like how many brilliant concepts could have changed the world if they weren't held back by the fear of being judged. Think about it, scientists who had groundbreaking theories but kept quiet because they worried about backlash. So many ideas that could have pushed society forward were just buried, hidden away under the weight of what could happen if they spoke up. It's such a shame. We really miss out on so much potential when creativity is stifled. Even in this heavy atmosphere, the human spirit found clever ways to keep going. Stories were still told, and ideas were still shared. But people had to be way more careful and creative about it. Imagine folks developing coded languages using subtle gestures and creating hidden meanings just to communicate those forbidden thoughts. It's like they turned the act of sharing dangerous ideas into a real art form. Picture someone slipping a note with a secret message during a crowded meeting, or a glance that says everything without a word. It was all about finding that delicate balance between expressing themselves and staying safe. Isn't it amazing how resilience can spark creativity in the toughest times? Reflecting on this wild era of dangerous words, it really hits home how much we should appreciate the freedoms we have today, right? The chance to speak our minds and share our stories without worrying about severe consequences is such a precious gift. Just think about it. People fought tooth and nail for this over centuries, facing struggles and sacrifices. Look at historical figures like Martin Luther King Jr. or Malala Yousafzai, who stood up for their beliefs despite the risks. Their courage paved the way for us to express ourselves freely. So let's not take this freedom for granted. It's a treasure that deserves our respect and celebration. Words are super powerful, right? Even in our fast-paced modern world, they can ignite passions, spark revolutions, and totally change the course of history. Just think about it. Martin Luther King Jr.'s "I Have a Dream" speech inspired a movement, and social media has given a voice to so many who were once silenced. Those lessons from the past remind us to use our words wisely and to really cherish the freedom of expression we enjoy today. We've got to stay alert, though, because there are always those who want to silence voices and stifle ideas. So let's keep the conversation going and ensure everyone gets to share their thoughts. As those dangerous words start to fade away, let's shine a light on a whole group of people who faced unique challenges just by being themselves. I mean, think about the everyday life of a woman back in medieval times. It was like walking a tightrope. Join me as we dive into being a woman, the perils of life. We'll uncover the struggles and dangers that half the population faced, from societal expectations to limited freedoms. Can you imagine the pressure? Women had to navigate a world where their voices often went unheard. Let's explore some real stories that highlight their resilience and strength. It's going to be an eye-opening journey, trust me. Childbirth mortality. Now, my friend, let us turn our attention to the perils of life faced by women in medieval times. A world where the most natural life-giving event could be a direct path to death. Imagine, if you will, a young woman in her teens or early 20s preparing for her first birth. The intense pain, the exhaustion, the agonizing uncertainty. For women in 1400, childbirth was one of the most significant and common dangers they faced. With limited medical knowledge, poor hygiene, had no understanding of germ theory. Giving birth was an incredibly dangerous ordeal. Picture the scene, a dimly lit room filled with the scent of herbs and the hushed whispers of midwives. The young mother-to-be lies on a bed of straw, her face contorted in pain, as she struggles to bring new life into the world. Infections were rampant. Complications like hemorrhaging, obstructed labor, or eclampsia were almost always fatal. The very act of bringing new life into the world, a profound and everyday female experience, was a leading cause of death for women in 1400. Many women had multiple pregnancies, and with each birth the risk accumulated. It was not uncommon for a woman to die in childbirth, leaving behind young children. This was an accepted tragic reality of life. Imagine the fear that must have gripped these women as they approached each pregnancy, knowing that it could very well be their last. But the dangers of being a woman in medieval times extended far beyond the birthing chamber. Women faced a pervasive vulnerability to violence and unfounded accusations. Imagine a society where women often had fewer legal rights, less physical strength, and were largely dependent on male relatives for protection. This made them susceptible to physical violence, both domestic and from strangers, with little recourse for justice. Picture a bustling medieval marketplace. A woman walks alone, carrying her basket of goods. Suddenly she feels a rough hand on her shoulder. She turns to see a group of men leering at her. She knows that if they choose to harm her, she has little hope of defending herself or seeking justice afterward. The constant fear of such encounters must have been a heavy burden to bear. Furthermore, medieval women, particularly those who were independent, unusual, or simply outspoken, were incredibly vulnerable to accusations, especially of witchcraft. Imagine a woman who knew about herbs, or who was perhaps a little too intelligent or defiant. In a superstitious age and often fueled by fear or malicious gossip, she could be accused of consorting with evil. Think of a wise woman living on the outskirts of a village. She has knowledge of healing herbs and has helped many in the community. But one day a child falls ill and dies despite her efforts. Whispers begin to circulate. The grieving parents, looking for someone to blame, point fingers at the healer. The consequences were brutal torture, public humiliation, and often execution by burning or hanging. Being a woman back in the 1400s was no walk in the park, right? Just think about it. Every single day came with its own set of dangers that men simply didn't have to deal with. Whether it was navigating the risks of childbirth or facing societal expectations, these women were constantly reminded of the inequalities that shaped their lives. Imagine experiencing life's milestones like getting married or having kids, with the looming threat that it could all turn fatal. It's a stark reality that really puts into perspective how tough it was to just exist as a woman during that time. Imagine the constant, subtle fear that must have permeated a woman's existence, the need to be constantly vigilant, always aware of one's surroundings and behavior. A wrong word, a misinterpreted gesture, could lead to dire consequences. The weight of societal expectations and limitations must have been suffocating. Women in the medieval era faced some serious dangers, but let me tell you, they showed incredible resilience and strength. It's really inspiring how they managed to navigate such a perilous world. They carved out their own spaces of autonomy and left a lasting mark on history. Take Eleanor of Aquitaine, for example. She was a total powerhouse. Or Joan of Arc, who bravely led troops into battle. And then there were those women who worked behind the scenes, shaping events through their influence on husbands, fathers, and sons. They may not have always been in the spotlight, but their impact was absolutely huge. It's fascinating to see how these women, in their own ways, fought for their voices and rights in a time that often tried to silence them. What do you think? Isn't it amazing how they navigated such a tough landscape? Imagine a noblewoman sitting by the warm glow of candlelight, carefully crafting a letter. Her words, though they seem harmless, are thoughtfully chosen to sway political opinions and influence big decisions. She totally understands the power of her sharp mind and uses it in a subtle way to shape her world. It's like she's playing a game of chess, moving her pieces just right. You know, she might mention a recent event, hinting at how it could affect the people, or even share a personal story that tugs at the heartstrings. It's fascinating how she navigates through the politics of her time, knowing that every word she writes could change someone's mind or even spark a revolution. Isn't it amazing how one person's intellect can ripple through society? In the convents, women found a true sanctuary from the chaos of the outside world. Here they could dive into education and explore their intellectual passions without the constant worry of childbirth or being pushed into unwanted marriages. Just picture a nun, deeply focused, her hands delicately working on an illuminated manuscript. It's like she's weaving magic with each stroke, creating stunning art while also preserving knowledge for generations to come. These women were not just hiding away. They were shaping history, crafting beautiful texts filled with wisdom and creativity. It's pretty inspiring, right? Even in the toughest times, women in peasant communities found incredible ways to make their mark. They didn't just sit back. They managed households, ran businesses while their husbands were away, and played vital roles in keeping their communities thriving. Imagine a farmer's wife, right? She's out there overseeing the harvest, directing workers, and making those tough calls that could really mean the difference between a cozy winter or a struggle for survival. It's all about resilience and strength. The struggles women faced in the 1400s were no joke. From the terrifying risks of childbirth to the constant fear of violence and false accusations, life was tough. But you know what? They didn't just survive, they thrived. These incredible women loved fiercely, worked hard, and created beautiful things, all while navigating a world that often overlooked their contributions. Their stories, often buried in history, show just how strong and resilient the human spirit can be. Think about it. Women were running households, managing farms, and even influencing art and culture, all while facing those daunting challenges. Isn't that inspiring? Reflecting on these challenges really brings to light how far we've come, but also how much work is still ahead of us, right? We can't forget the medieval women who faced such tough struggles. Think about their fears and the way they fought against the odds. Their stories of triumph inspire us to push for true equality and safety for everyone today. Let's carry their memories with us as we work to shape a better world for ourselves and future generations. It's all about making sure their voices are heard and celebrated, you know? As our peaceful journey through time comes to a close, allow the quiet contemplation of these hidden perils to settle gently within you. We've explored how simple, everyday activities in 1400 could surprisingly lead to a tragic end. Drinking water, eating bread, getting dressed, walking outside, cooking, visiting doctors, going to market, building homes, speaking words, And simply being a woman, all these seemingly innocent acts held potential dangers. Imagine, if you will, the life of a common person in those distant times. Their world was filled with unseen threats, misunderstood risks, and perils accepted as the natural course of fate. Yet they lived on, driven by a resilience born from necessity. Perhaps in their lack of knowledge about these dangers, they found a certain peace we might envy today. Picture a young woman in 1400 rising with the sun to begin her day. As she reaches for her water jug, she's unaware of the microscopic threats lurking within. The simple act of quenching her thirst could bring illness or worse. Yet she drinks without fear, for she knows no other way. Now, envision her preparing the day's bread. The flour, stored in damp conditions, may harbor invisible mold spores. The very sustenance meant to nourish could slowly poison. But she kneads the dough with care, oblivious to the potential harm. As she dresses for the day, her clothes, woven from rough fabrics, might scratch and irritate her skin. The dyes used could contain toxic substances, slowly seeping into her body. Yet she adorns herself proudly, feeling the comfort of familiar garments. Stepping outside, she faces a world of unpredictable dangers. The streets, narrow and unsanitary, teem with both human and animal waste. Disease spreads easily in these conditions, but she walks on, her mind occupied with the day's tasks rather than unseen threats. In her small kitchen, she tends to the cooking fire. The smoke fills the air, its acrid scent a constant companion. She doesn't know of its slow, harmful effects on her lungs. To her, it's simply the smell of home and hearth. Should illness strike, her options for care are limited and often dangerous themselves. The local doctor, armed with theories of humors and bloodletting, might do more harm than good. Yet in times of need, she would turn to him with hope and trust. At the market, she carefully selects her goods, unaware that the meat might be tainted or the vegetables grown in contaminated soil. The concept of food safety is centuries away. She chooses based on appearance and affordability, trusting in the familiar. The very walls that shelter her family could pose a threat. Built with materials we now know to be hazardous, her home might slowly contribute to ill health. But to her it's a sanctuary, a place of safety and comfort in a harsh world. Even her words, spoken freely, could bring danger. In a time of strict social and religious codes, a misplaced comment or rumor could lead to dire consequences. Yet she speaks with her neighbors, sharing news and gossip, finding community in shared conversation. And through it all, simply being a woman brings its own set of risks. Childbirth, a natural yet perilous event, looms as a constant shadow. Limited rights and opportunities narrow her world, but she perseveres, finding strength in the role society has given her. My friend, perhaps in understanding these countless, subtle perils of 1400, you can find a profound sense of retrospective relaxation in your own present moment. Think about the clean, safe water you can drink without a second thought. The food you eat, regulated and refrigerated. The robust structures that surround you. The freedom you have to speak your mind. The advanced medical care available at your fingertips. These are privileges beyond the wildest dreams of our ancestors. Your world is, in so many ways, incredibly safe. Allow that profound sense of security to wash over you. Let the worries of today gently recede, knowing how far humanity has come. Feel the weight of centuries of progress cradling you in its protective embrace. As you lie in your bed, surrounded by the comforts of the modern world, take a moment to appreciate the safety that envelops you. The air you breathe is cleaner, the water you drink is purer, and the food you eat is safer than ever before in human history. May this journey through time bring you a profound sense of tranquility. May it offer you a gentle invitation to your own deep restorative slumber, cradled in the security of your modern world. As you drift towards sleep, let the contrast between then and now soothe your mind and ease your spirit. Close your eyes now, my friend. Feel the soft embrace of your bed, the gentle weight of your blankets. Listen to the quiet hum of your safe, modern home. Let the worries and stresses of your day melt away, replaced by a deep appreciation for the peace and security that surrounds you. Allow your breath to slow down and let your muscles melt into relaxation. With each exhale, picture yourself letting go of all the stress and worries of the day. And with every inhale, you're in that deep, comforting feeling of safety that's truly yours in this crazy modern world. Imagine drifting gently into a peaceful slumber, knowing you're surrounded by layers of protection and comfort that our ancestors could only dream of. You've got cozy blankets, a warm home, and the freedom to just be yourself. So take a moment to appreciate all these little things that keep you safe and sound. You deserve this tranquility, right? Embrace it and let it wash over you like a gentle wave. Sleep now and sleep well, for in understanding the perils of the past, we find a deeper appreciation for the sanctuary of the present. Good night and sweet dreams.